And now, here's Vegas Vic.
Hello and welcome to our show. This episode is part 3 of our 3-part series on no-limit Texas Hold'em tournaments. In this program, we will discuss and disclose many of the important advanced strategies that successful and professional tournament poker players use in order to provide for themselves an advantage. These are the very same skills and very same playing principles that knowledgeable players use to advance themselves to the final table. However, make no mistake about it, playing with these skills always at your disposal, fully complemented by your store of knowledge of no-limit Texas Hold'em play, is very difficult, and even more difficult to successfully apply to each and every circumstance and each and every poker tournament. Only a handful of the world's top professionals can do so successfully on a recurring basis. The good news is that these skills can be learned, and to help you do this, let's go to the table. If it is your desire to become more than just an average tournament poker player, you are now facing the daunting task of assembling not only the knowledge of the game, but also the required wide range of applicable skills. Many of these skills come with experience. However, there are guidelines that you can learn and follow that will help you along the way. To successfully reach the ranks of top poker tournament players, you will need to master 3 key areas of poker playing success. These are learning to avoid mistakes, mastering the cards, and psychological warfare. Taking advantage of mistakes made by your opponents is key to your success as long as you yourself can avoid making them. Avoiding mistakes is therefore the first important advanced skill that you can learn. The most common mistakes made by players in poker tournaments are as follows: being blinded by the ace, failing to scout the table, forgetting that chips are your tool and should be treated well, failing to count the blinds, antes, and rounds of play, and failing to recognize the danger in coordinated flops. Being blinded by the ace is a common mistake. We call this the TV syndrome because many players have seen televised final tables where players play any ace and often win with it. However, playing ace-no kicker is another prescription for disaster. If you fail to scout the table of your opponents, you're making a critical mistake that will cost you a lot of chips. However, this can be very easily overcome. When not involved in a hand, pay attention to those that are and what and how they are playing. Classify your players as we discussed in one of our earlier programs. Your chips are your tools and you should treat them well. Never forget this. They are not only your tools, but your life's blood. Don't throw them around just because it's easy to do. Remember that the chips you don't lose by playing recklessly are equally as valuable, if not more so, than the chips you win. If you don't have the chips with which to win other chips, you won't win anything. Another critical mistake is to fail to count the blinds and antes and the rounds of play. In order for you to have a successful and applicable strategy for each stage of the tournament, you need to be aware of where you are, the size of the blinds, when do the antes kick in, and how expensive current and future rounds are and will become relative to the chips you have. The final critical mistake that you can learn to avoid is to become acutely aware of coordinated flops. Whenever you see a flop that contains suited cards or connected cards or big cards, and these flops did not match the cards you have, either by giving you the best hand or the best draw to the best hand, don't press it. Learn to fold. The fact is that most poker tournament winners don't actually win the tournament. Other players lose it. It is a simple fact that the majority of winners accumulate their chips from players who have failed to properly react and understand coordinated flops. By avoiding this mistake, you can and will accumulate chips faster and with less risk. The second of our major categories is mastering the cards. This means to become aware of the power and vulnerability of the kind of cards you will receive in any Texas Hold'em poker tournament. We will classify those cards into categories beginning with the big pairs and ace-king. Big pairs consist of pocket aces, pocket kings, pocket queens, and pocket jacks. By the time you are ready to view this program, you should be well aware of how to play these hands. Ace-King is usually considered the most overplayed hand in Texas Hold'em, especially in tournaments. It looks like a really good hand, but the truth is that it is nothing more than a drawing hand. Even if it is suited, it is still an underdog to any pair, including the lowly pair of deuces. Don't make the mistake of thinking that Ace-King is just as good as pocket aces. This kind of thinking is perhaps the biggest mistake made by unaware and novice poker players, and in tournaments it can quickly spell disaster. Playing middle pairs successfully is both a skill as well as an art. Middle pairs are hands such as 10-10, 9-9, 8-8, and 7-7. They can be problematic and usually are worth playing only from late positions and only under ideal circumstances. Such circumstances include analyzing your opponents and the situations and using position to raise and win the pot uncontested. Such plays are particularly valuable in later rounds after the antes have kicked in. For the sake of understanding, small pairs are hands consisting of 6-6, 5-5, 4-4, 3-3, and 2-2. Playing them profitably can sometimes be done under the right conditions, particularly in short-handed play. Oftentimes, especially on televised final tables, you will see players playing small pairs, and sometimes they are described by the commentators as favorites. While it is true that even a pair of deuces is a small favorite over Ace-King, the fact remains that playing small pairs or overplaying them can cost you more money than you usually will win. Playing suited connectors successfully is another weapon that you can acquire and add to your poker knowledge and expertise. For example, the most popular and profitable suited connectors are 7-8 and 8-9 suited. Statistically, these are the best hands to possess whenever facing big pocket pairs. In fact, both of these hands can sometimes be favored even over pocket aces and pocket kings. Any poker tournament is a contest, a battle between you and the rest of the field. They are the opponents, and you are there to defeat them. They, of course, are there to defeat you. Those that succeed not only command great knowledge of the game and abilities to play their cards as profitably as possible, but they also must possess psychological abilities well above those that are common amongst the general public. First of all, always be calm and never let your emotions get the better of you. No matter how bad the beat is that you suffered, remember that if you still have chips, you still have a shot. In poker in general, and especially in poker tournaments, your profitability is directly related to exploiting the weaknesses and shortcomings in your opponents. In tournaments, this is the classic case of survival of the fittest, the smartest, and those who adapt the fastest to changing circumstances. To do this successfully, you must be at peace within yourself and never let your emotions get in the way of clear thinking. If you can think clearly, your judgment will not be clouded, and therefore you will be able to recognize the failings in your opponents and take advantage of them. You can manipulate your opponents into either overplaying their marginal hands or folding their good hands. You can bet the pot, or more than the pot, or less than the pot, or move all in, or entice your opponents to move all in, all depending on how you are able to read and manipulate them based upon your own skills and strengths. Sometimes it is more to your advantage to bet little and let your opponents come over the top of you if you have the best hand. This is the classic deception trap, and it can be successfully employed only if you have been able to identify that weakness and that tendency in your opponent to do exactly that when you give him or her the right amount of bait. In other situations, whenever you encounter an overly emotional player, particularly someone who thinks they are playing very well, you can easily administer a dose of reality, especially if you get lucky against them. This will put them on serious tilt, and as a consequence, they will then feel obliged to aggressively play against you in order to get even. If you do this correctly and have sufficient discipline to thereafter only play with them under ideal conditions where you know you have the best hand, or at least suspect this to be the case, you can usually get all of their chips. Finally, the best way to apply psychological warfare in poker tournaments is by manipulating the size of the pot. By either giving your opponent the right odds to call or the incorrect odds to call, you will be able to manipulate the circumstances to benefit you when you want to win the pot uncontested, or to add more chips to the pot when this is what you want. Bluffing is part of this, but that aspect of psychological warfare in poker is often overused, and just about every poker player in today's poker environment knows about this and suspects it. For this reason, whenever you are on the button, the first few times raise only with premium hands. Most players will suspect that you are trying to steal and will give you action. When they see your good hand, it will surprise them, and consequently it will thereafter be easier for you to really steal from that position. In general, however, you can bluff more successfully once you reach the money rounds and are closer to the final few tables. Prior to that, it is best to confine your play to good starting hands. Nevertheless, be prepared to also rely on your ability to observe the strengths and weaknesses of your opponents. All of this goes back to the very beginning, especially the very beginning rounds of the tournament itself. If you spent those long hours patiently observing your opponents and learning how they play, by the time you get to these middle and late rounds, where psychological warfare is most profitable, you will now have all the ammunition that you need in order to overcome your opponents and any adversity you might encounter along the way. And that is why you should never waste a minute throughout any tournament, and always pay attention to what is happening and who is doing it and how. Becoming a good poker player and a good tournament poker player is a combination of knowledge, skill, patience, perseverance, competitiveness, and the sheer will to prevail. Becoming a great poker player and a great tournament player is all of this and more. All that we have shown in all of our episodes in this series, and everything else that you can learn from playing, watching, and reading about poker, all of this comes together within the person that is you. Inside your mind and your being, this then creates that magical tapestry that combines to fill in all the empty spaces until finally there emerges a picture, and that picture becomes you, the successful and profitable poker player. For me, it has been a pleasure to spend this time with you to talk about my favorite game in the world, poker, in all of its variations. And so, from Las Vegas, and until next time, remember to play smart and play to win. I'm Victor H. Royer, and this has been a presentation of PartyPoker.com. Bye.
This has been a presentation of MRM Entertainment, Inc. in association with Nevada Production Studios and PartyPoker.com.